How's everybody doing? It's a mixed bag. That's all I can say. I was thinking about this while I was standing there. First service, at the end of the first service, this alert goes off. You know how the National Emergency Weather Service, puts that? And so, trying to close the service and ring, everybody's phones and everybody's looking down. I'm like, I've lost them. Totally lost. But the one thing, it was interesting, everybody is so excited about a big snowstorm coming. We're really anxious. I remember being a kid. There were 2 times I would pray, intensely. It was before school, so I didn't have to go to school. It was before church, so I didn't have to go to church. My dad was a pastor. Nothing against him. It's just, man, it's nice when you can kind of just hang out at home. You know what I'm saying? I stopped that years ago, I'm sure. I don't pray for services to be canceled. No, anyways, I won't get into that. But I did find out that a couple places where I find are very spiritual, it's in snowing conditions on the road. Lots of prayer. I find people of all different backgrounds, they're praying, God help me. God keep me safe. I love that. And golf. That's my thing. It's like, oh, God help me make this shot. Help me make this putt. It's great. 2 spiritual things. Just thought I'd throw that out. Those are all free. And additions to today. Well, I wanted to let you know a couple things today. First of all, when Matt was talking about Kids Against Hunger, we packed 75,000 meals. It's amazing. It's a machine. You don't want to you don't want to miss it. You want to be a part of this because it's so incredible. And to know that you're impacting people who desperately need that is just so heartwarming. And it just has such depth of meaning. The second thing is I wanted to remind you, last week we had limited attendance, so I'll say it in this service so that you'll hear, is we have a team of 5 going to India. Myself, Jim Osborne, Jim Mills, Doug Young, and Luca Coons. We're all heading to India to see our work there over at the Hope Outreach Center. And so February 7th through the 19th, I'll be gone. Pray for us. The one flight that we schedule is 36 hours. And I'm like, this is going to be fun. You know how you talk yourself into stuff? So anyways, it's going to be amazing, honestly, to see those who are unfamiliar with it. The Hope Outreach Center is where we have built a center in India where kids can be tutored, where they can be loved, where they have a place where they get a snack, they have people who care about them after school, because one thing that happens over there is the lack of education has caused a desperate state of poverty. These kids can't get jobs, they have no way to make an income, there is no future for them. And so what we did is we put together this Hope Outreach Center so that they can get their education, they can get a job, and they can have hope for a future. And so everything that you give toward the Hope Outreach Center goes completely there, and that's what we support as a church. We're the only supporting church. So we're the ones who 100% support this ministry there. And we're also going to be looking at a second outreach center that Pastor Niraj is building. So just letting you know about that. It's coming up because we're halfway through January. Hard to believe. Well, we're going to build on what we did last week. We're talking about truth and the critical nature of truth last week as John begins this letter, and we started a study in 1 John. And today I want to talk to you, we want to build on that. We're going to flesh this out a little bit in verses 5 to 10. I'll begin with this thought. Have you ever had a difficult conversation where you had to confront somebody with something that was true? Have you ever had those confrontational conversations? Don't you love them? Don't you just love walking into a moment knowing you got to have a really difficult conversation? Whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coworker, whether it's anyone, it's just difficult. I think it's harder when it's family. So what we often try to do is we minimize some things. We try to make it less painful. And we try to make it not so big of a deal. And this whole idea of minimizing it so it won't hurt so much, right? Have you ever been there, you've done that? I've been there, I've done that. There's a statement that someone made, and he said it, if you care about someone, you'll tell them the truth. If you care about yourself, you'll tell them what they want to hear. And when you really consider the reality of that, what happens is John comes out of the gate and he begins telling his readers not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear because he loves them, because he cares about them. There's false teaching that is happening all over. It's corrupting the church. It's watering down the gospel. And he comes out and he says, we need to have a conversation. There's a few things awry. And I'm going to clarify them. And that's what happens here in verses 5 to 10. And so I want to take you down this passage so that you can see that today. So let me read it for you. In verse 5, he says this: "This is the message which we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say we have fellowship with him while we walk in darkness, we lie." I love the fact he's so gentle. You know, we lie and do not practice the truth. "But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say we have not sinned, we make him a liar, and his word is not in us." So John comes out and he begins talking about this because of the false teaching that had come against the church. And there are three things that he really basically clarifies. He talks about the holiness of God, the sinfulness of man, and the gospel of how God met both of those realities, built a bridge between God's holiness and man's sinfulness. And it's just a beautiful picture, and I want to shed some light on it today. It's interesting. When we talk about relationship with God, if you just do a poll and you talk to people out there and you go, "Hey, man, you have a relationship with God?" "Yeah, man. I got a relationship with God. You know, I know the big guy." And they're like, "Okay, well, what's that based on?" "I just, me. It's just, I know I do. I just have this feeling." You see, when we talk about relationships with God, to have a relationship with God, there's a perceived relationship, there's a right relationship, and there's a wrong relationship. And so John comes out and he begins talking about a perception that exists that needs to be clarified. He said some people are perceiving that they have a relationship with God, and it's not true. That they have this fellowship with God, and it's not true. But John begins this conversation. It's interesting. He begins it not by talking about God's love, because that's where I would start. I would just start talking about God's love. Jesus loves you so much. This is what he did for you. He doesn't do that. He comes out of the gate and he talks about God's holiness. He said that God is light. In him is no darkness. He's pure, he's perfect, there's no sin in him. And that's the foundation that he lays as he begins to have the rest of the conversation. He goes, you must understand the nature of God if you're going to understand the rest of the conversation, the rest of what we're going to talk about. If you have an incorrect understanding of God, then none of the rest is going to make sense. So you got to have, first of all, this understanding that God is holy, that he is perfect in all he does. He has been perfect from the beginning, and he is going to be perfect to the end. But I think the other thing about God's holiness is this, is that his holiness is what allows us to see the beauty and the extravagance of his love. Because if we have this incorrect view of God, then the God who came and made a way for us to have a right relationship through him by Jesus dying on the cross, all of that sounds good. But when you understand he's perfect and he didn't have to, that he had no reason to do that because of his perfection, then we begin to get a better glimpse of this. We understand this in human terms when we have a situation where there's a broken relationship and the offended person stands at a distance. You ever been in that situation where you're like, well, yeah, they should have never done that? And instead of standing in a place where you know you're right, you didn't do anything, and instead of standing in a place of judgment, looking at the wrong that they have done, it's to take a step forward and say, hey, I care enough about this relationship that I'm willing to initiate this dialogue so we can make things right. And I think here, when we understand God's holiness, is he's perfect. He didn't have to initiate, but he chose to, and that gives us a depth of his love that we would never understand otherwise. He initiated on our behalf. So the first thing that I want you to see today as we look at this is get a glimpse of God's holiness. Not just of his love. See him for the individual that he is, the pure, spotless Son of God, the pure, spotless Father in heaven. But he's perfect in all he does. But John's battling something. He starts with God's holiness, but he's battling against something because here the false teachers were telling them that you could live in sin and have a right relationship with God. So he begins to expose this and speak into it. And so let me just look at this next section so that we can begin to understand that in order to have a right relationship with God, we must understand what's hindering that. He uses this phrase, and I'll take you to these passages. He uses this phrase, if we say. 3 times he uses it in this passage. If we say this, he says, you're lying, you're a deceiver, and the truth is not in you. That should get our attention, you know? It's like, have you ever had somebody look you in the eye and say, you're lying? That doesn't feel good. But John looks at his readers and he says this, he goes, I'm telling you, because of God's holiness, if this is the way you're living, you're lying. You're lying about having a right relationship with God because it can't happen. Light and darkness cannot be in the same place. It's just the way it is. So let me take you to the first one. First one's in verse 6. Look at this. It's interesting. He says in verse 6, if we say, remember, and some translations might say, if we claim, but if we say we have fellowship with him, with God, while we walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. So John's speaking against this idea that I can say, like anyone, oh yeah, I have a relationship with God, I'm good with God, all of that, and you live a life that is totally void of anything about God. It's all about you, it's all about your pursuits, it's maybe just full of sinful activity, whatever. You can't claim that. and be right. You can claim it and be wrong. He says you're lying. We have a lot of people in our culture who claim to have a relationship with God, and there's nothing in their lifestyle that would prove it. There's nothing that would show that there's something positive in their relationship with God. And yet there's this claim. And he calls this out and he says, you can't have a relationship with God if you're living for yourself, if you're living in sin, if you have unconfessed sin, you can't have fellowship or a right relationship with God. Impossible. And I love the metaphor he uses. It's light. Light casts out darkness. We can't be with God, darkness and light coming together. It's impossible. He solves this puzzle later. But I wanted you to see the picture, this light and darkness. He says, if you're walking in darkness, you can't have fellowship with light. Makes sense. If you're living in sin, if you're living for self, your claim to have a relationship and fellowship with God is untrue. Then he has two others. Look at this in verses 8 and 10, very similar, yet distinct in their own way. In verses 8 and 10, he says it this way, again, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. And then in verse 10, if we say we have not sinned, we make him a liar, and his word is not in us. This idea is some of these Gnostics had actually taught that you could find sinless perfection if you just understand at the very essence of how you were created good, and you were enlightened, and that you really never did sin. That everything around you, you've never done anything wrong. He says you're lying. It's not true. You've sinned. He says, and then these other ones, if you try to live in a way that's just perfect, and they use this idea of asceticism, that I would live in a way where I deny my body all of these things, and supposedly then be this righteous person before God. Listen, what makes us right before God is not just the practices, the good practices that we have. It's the forgiveness we have. It's interesting, I'll tell you this story. I was thinking about it last night. It's a story about a shepherd. There's a man who went to see a shepherd. He wanted to learn about what it meant to be a shepherd and understand sheep better. And so he went to visit him. He went to his little house, and it was on a hillside. And on the hillside, there were all these sheep grazing in this beautiful green grass. And the gentleman, before he went in to have lunch with the shepherd to just talk about what shepherding was all about, he said, man, those sheep, they look so white. They look just spectacular on the hillside. And he said, yeah, it's pretty incredible. And so they walked in, they had lunch, he learned a lot about shepherding, and he walked out, and while they were in having lunch, light snow had fallen. And it covered the hillside. No longer was it green, it was completely pure white. The same gentleman looked at the sheep and he goes, wow, those sheep are pretty dirty. They're not as clean as I thought they were. And what he was saying, and what we realize to be true spiritually, is what we evaluate our life against is important. If I want to compare myself to someone else and go, well, thank God I'm not like them. Whew, are they a piece of work? You ever been there? You done that? Yeah, you have. This is church. Admit it. We've all been there. Oh, thank God I'm not like them. No, it's when we come face to face with a holy God and we stand as him as our backdrop so that we can see everything within our life. That's clarity. We need to make sure that we are not comparing ourselves to other people, but that we have our lives that the light of God is shining against so that we can see the truth of who we are against his perfect and holy character. The last thing that we see here is not just our sinfulness. We need to deal with that, and God's holiness, that's important. But this is a picture of the gospel. How do you reconcile the two? How do you have a holy God who is light and you have sinful man who is darkness? How do you bring them together? And this is the picture of the gospel. It's how it works. And so in verse 7, he says to walk in the light as he himself is in the light. He talks about these realities, but in the book that John wrote prior, in the Gospel of John, he says this, but he who practices the truth comes to the light so that his deeds may be manifest as having been wrought in God. To walk in the light is to allow God to expose, first of all, our sinfulness, to be able to see ourselves as we are. It's funny, I was sharing with the first service that, you know, when we talk about sin, the best thing is sometimes denial. If I just deny it, it didn't happen, right? It's kind of like going to the doctor. If you go to the doctor, and how many of you love going to the doctor? You like going to the doctor? I hate going to the doctor. You go to the doctor and you go, Doc, listen, I got this issue. And he goes, yeah, that's a problem. It's a problem? I always hate that, you know? They go, it's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. So what do I need to do about it? And he tells you, and you go, no, I'm not going to believe you. I'm just going to deny that reality exists. And he goes, no, you got this going on inside of you. And the best thing that you can do in that moment, and I've learned this is awesome. I don't care what they tell you, just completely dismiss it. Yeah, just walk out and go, how'd it go? Went great. Well, what'd they say? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to believe them. Well, then why'd you go? Well, I don't know. I feel better. I don't know. It works for a little bit, and then you're in this heap. Initially, denial feels great. I walk out of the doctor. I don't feel bad at all. But if I'm not going to treat the problem, eventually that's going to catch up to me. And I think spiritually we do the same thing. Oftentimes, like we have this idea of denial. We have this, I don't know why. We defend, we deny, we stand at a distance. And God says this. He goes, come to the light so it can expose. So that it can allow you to see what's in the cracks and the crevices of your mind, your heart, your practices, your lifestyle. Allow God to shine his light on you. It's the first thing. He says, people who are sinful love darkness because they don't want light to shine on them. But the light is what exposes. He says, come to the light. Let God shine his light upon you. And for those people that John was speaking to that says, well, we've never sinned. I have that little spark of good in me that has been growing, and I'm just, I'm this special person that's never sinned. Well, we know that's not true, right? You think of we had 8 expectant moms, but Danny gave birth. So Matt's wife, our next gen pastor's wife, gave birth, and they have a new little child. Holland. Whoa, that was weird. Holland. And so now we have 7 expectant mothers. The one thing I've learned I've had 4 kids. My wife had them, but I always make jokes about delivering babies. It's like delivering a baby. She goes, you have no clue what you're talking about. But it's fun. But the one thing that you learn about young families is this: the parents don't have to teach their kids what's wrong. The rest of their life, they're teaching them what's right. And it's like, Junior, you know better than that. They don't sit down with their kids and go, oh, you got to learn how to be devious. No, they are devious. There are those realities, right? And so he says, with these realities, we know we're sinful. Let's just call it what it is. We are sinful people. Come to the light, let God expose, let him manifest, let him shine light so that we can see whatever sinfulness is in us, not to shame us, not to distance us, not to judge us. Listen to what he says, verse 9. This is powerful. You don't want to miss it. He says, if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sin and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. To confess means to agree with God that our sin is sin. Forgiveness is that the reality that the debt of sin has been paid in full. The cleansing that he's talking about is the defilement of sin. It's that sense of shame, that sense of impurity. He says, God will remove that too. He'll take both. He'll forgive you, he'll remove the debt, and he'll cleanse you. He'll take that shame and remove it as well. He didn't just die for our sin, he died for our shame as well. It's powerful. And the last is the result. It's just that he says that when we do this, that we have fellowship with God and with other believers. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? So as we look at this and we understand this is the gospel, this is where we understand this holy, perfect God and this imperfect, sinful man. The bridge is Jesus when he comes and he dies on the cross. He allows us to experience forgiveness because he's paid our sin debt in full. And then he cleanses us so that we don't have to walk with this sense of shame with our head down. He says, you hold your head up not because you're good. You hold your head up because I am good. You have forgiveness not because somehow you've done enough good to balance it out. You have forgiveness because I paid it in full. Those are the realities that he's talking about. And all these false teachers coming against him and saying, no, you can live however you want, do whatever you want, live in sin, and you can have a right relationship with God. Listen, we know that's not even true physically, relationally. You have a bad relationship with someone here on this earth, you're not like chummy with them. You don't go, hey, man, you want to hang out? You're like, loser. I don't want to be around them. You walk into a room where they're at, and you're like, oh, well, yeah. All kinds of things going through your head. The same thing in our relationship with God. If we don't come to this place where we allow God's light to shine on us, remove all of those impurities in us, then we are fooling ourselves in believing that we have a right relationship with God. But on the other hand, if we come and we say, God, show me, then everything he exposes, he covers. Everything that he exposes, he purifies and brings the beauty of that restored relationship back. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, ain't nothing like it. That's beautiful. Humanly, it's beautiful when you have that. But when you have the God of heaven, knowing me in all my frailty and all my sinfulness, meeting me there and bringing forgiveness and cleansing and restoration. Yeah, praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. And so today, just want to give a couple moments at the end of the service here, because we don't do this all the time, as far as just take time for us. And I want you to think about this. I'm going to give you some guidelines. Don't think about the person next to you. Don't think about the person, that comes to mind. Think about you. And I want you to ask us a question specifically. A couple. Do I have a right relationship with God? Just sit there in that. Answer that question. I can't answer it for you. Then ask the next question. Is there something that, God, you need to shine light into my life to allow me to see that is hindering my relationship with you? Is there something that needs to be made manifest, that needs to be revealed, that needs to be exposed so that you can do your good work of forgiveness and cleansing? Take time and do that, because, man, there is nothing like having a right relationship with God. Not just being known by him, enjoying him, and him enjoying you. So I'm going to ask the prayer team if they would just come up and be up front. If you want them to pray with you, you can come and just pray at the stairs. You can pray in your seats, but I'm going to give you like a couple minutes and just take some time with God.